Good morning, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to take you over to the vegetable garden and show you around and let you know what I have growing and give you any tips and ideas. So this used to be a chicken area that we had. We don't have our chickens anymore, and it stays shady pretty much all morning long. So I decided to kind of do an experimental garden in here and see what would grow in like a half shade as it gets sun this way later in the day. So I put my more delicate vegetables in here, the ones with the thin leaves that tend to have a lot of water loss in direct sun, such as squashes, zucchinis and cucumbers and beans, and they're doing okay. The ones that really don't like being in here, I threw some leeks in here and they don't do well. My lettuce did really good in here. So lettuce and squash seem to be doing the best in this partial shade. This corner gets more sun quicker in the day, and those are my potatoes, and we'll talk about those in a minute. Right here in the container beds, I did more of the herbs. I have some nasturtiums here. So nasturtiums are an edible flower, and they do taste really good. The leaves and the flowers are both kind of like a peppery, spicy flavor with like some greenness to it. The flowers are crisp and they're really good. You can put them on top of salad, you can put them on cakes, put them in ice cubes for a little decorative touch to your drinks. Lots of different things you can do with nasturtium flowers. They taste pretty good and they're so pretty to like just add to something to kind of surprisingly dress it up. A lot of people are usually very surprised to see flowers on their food. It looks really good with like salmon or like a broiled fish in particular. This is chamomile. I'm waiting for it to just flower now. It's beginning, and I love my chamomile tea. Chamomile tea is so good when you're making it out of fresh flowers. Chamomile obviously being good for relaxation and sleep, so it's a really good nighttime tea, or just calming anxiety or nerves. Anytime you need something to kind of calm and soothe your soul, chamomile is just a great go-to, and it's so delicious when it's fresh. I have some little seedlings in there, some eggplants that I put in. There are some carrots and some little sugar peas coming up in this area here. These are more sugar snap peas growing up this little trellis, and they're just starting to flower. And we can talk about the difference between the different peas when these guys make their pods. Beets, I harvested a lot of these beets just the other day, and I left some of these smaller ones behind to see if they'll get any bigger. Beets are just so good for you. Yes, they taste very earthy, but I found that they're absolutely delicious when you roast them in the oven. It really brings the sugars more forward to do like a slow roast, and they sweeten up really good. Beet greens, however, are extremely good for you. A lot of people just chop them and throw them away or throw them in their compost pile, and I'm telling you, don't. They are so good for you. Beet greens are absolutely full of vitamins and antioxidants, and they're actually more nutritional than the beet itself. Chop them up, put them in salad, use them as the bulk of your salad. I also threw my leaves in the dehydrator at 120 degrees, and they were dehydrated in like less than 2 hours, and then I crumpled them up into like a fine powder and put them in a jar, and then I can throw them into like soups and stews and things like that later on for added nutrition and some green flavor to it. So I'm looking forward to that. But eat your beet greens, they're so good for you. And if you don't like beets, the greens are definitely not as earthy as the beets themselves. So if you don't like beets, try the greens and grow them for the greens if you prefer them over the actual beets, and maybe just give the beets to neighbors if you don't like beets. There's more carrots coming up in here. I'll have more beets coming up through here because after I pulled the last ones, I planted a few more seeds for a second harvest. These guys are early wonder beets, so they grow really quickly. I had these in just no time. So early wonder is a great beet that forms quickly. I have some more actually right there. And there's a sweet potato growing there, and then my garlic is it's all laying down and pretty much getting ready to be harvested. So I'm kind of been putting it off because I didn't want to pull them too early, but you plant your garlic in the fall, and it's usually ready to harvest by sometime in July, and we're just heading into July now, so they should be getting ready. My tops are all down and flat. They're started to turn brown, and that is a sign that my garlic cloves should be ready to harvest, and I'm really excited because we're going to be doing that very soon, and I can't wait to see how they look. This is a cucumber vine. It actually, I did not plant it in this box. I had cucumbers in here last year, and apparently this guy self-seeded. So I'm trying to get it to go up this little piece of lattice, but it keeps falling off, so I'll have to tie it and secure it to start bringing it upwards and get it off my beets and carrots. So when I saw it come up, I'm like, oh, I have a little volunteer cucumber. I'm just going to let it do its thing. Anytime I get volunteer vegetables, I let them grow pretty much where they are unless they're really going to be a problem. This is dill, and I did harvest it just the other day. I had these big, beautiful flower heads on it, and I'm like, I have to make pickles. So I put up 8 pounds of dill pickles just the other day, and they just look beautiful and fabulous. But here is the seed head. This is a smaller seed head of the dill, and dill is also a host plant for swallowtail butterflies. So if you see big beautiful caterpillars on your dill, and they're like black and white stripy caterpillars, don't freak out because they're swallowtail butterflies. And if I get them on my dill, fennel is another plant they love. If and when I do get swallowtail butterflies, I always leave a part of the plant behind just for the caterpillars, because swallowtail butterflies, once they host on a plant, the babies have to stay there. So you can't like take them off the plant and then move them like over to a tree or something. They'll die. They have to be hosted on the plant that the mother chooses for them, and that's very important to know. So keep your caterpillar, your butterfly caterpillars on any plants that you find them on, and just save a piece just for them. I might actually grow some dill or some fennel next year in a specific spot just for my butterflies, and just let them have the whole stand. I wanted to do that this year, but I just didn't have the space or the time to really do it. Next year I'll definitely do it because we need to support our beautiful pollinators. I love dill. It smells so good when it starts to flower. In this bucket, I just have some extra pepper plants that I didn't really have room for in the garden. And I started a lot of seeds in buckets so they would just have a lot of space. I also have tomatoes right there. I just start them in buckets because it's easier. And they go in the greenhouse and they start and they grow, and I don't have to worry about transplanting them so quickly. And they do great in buckets instead of those little tiny seed pots. So that's what I would do. I use the seed pots too, but I don't know, for plants I know that are going to get big and I might not have space for, just starting them directly in soil in a bucket works for me. These I'm excited about. These are watermelon plants, and watermelon can be tricky because it is a very heavy feeder. You need to feed them incredibly well, keep them well watered, and they also need like a good 100, I think it might even be 120 days of warmth and heat. These guys really need warm weather to perform well. So you need a long extended growing season. I did not do well with cucumbers when I tried them in like New York State because we just didn't have enough warm days. But here in Illinois, sometimes we get really warm weathers well into September. So I'm really hoping that my watermelon does really well here. And I gave it like this crazy looking trellis that I found. Like, we went to find pallets and wood and all this stuff behind Tractor Supply Company, and I found that they had just kind of like threw this away. I'm like, that would make a great trellis for something. So we brought it home, and I'm hoping to put my watermelons up on this thing as a support, because I like to do some vertical gardening and help save some space on my garden itself. So these here are peppers. These should be red bell peppers, and I've been feeding these really well too. Oh, and if you're wondering what I feed my watermelon, right now they're top dressed with composted manure, and I also fed them some fish emulsion just a couple weeks ago as well. So I'm going to keep them well top dressed with manure throughout the season. More of my early wonder beets that were planted after the last ones I just showed you. So we'll have another crop here. And I just like to do succession cropping so that I'll be picking beets throughout the season. So like after harvesting those, I planted more seeds, but now I have these that'll be ready before then, and just kind of keep succession planting these guys because they do grow so quickly. This is just a couple of pumpkins. I didn't have a lot of space for pumpkins, so I threw 2 seeds in here. These will just be carving jack-o'-lanterns. I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with the vines as they get huge, but I figured I'll figure it out as I go, and that's why I only did 2, because I love to have some of my own pumpkins. I just didn't really have a lot of space for a lot of them. And pumpkins are really super easy. I really just water them and let them do their own thing. And I kind of ignore them throughout the year. I just wait for them to get pumpkins, and then I like roll the pumpkins around so they don't get a flat side. And these guys are just getting ready to flower. So we can talk more about these as they start to develop. This is a jalapeno pepper, doing really well. I almost have some ready to harvest, and I'm just going to wait for them to get a little bit bigger, and then what I'll do is I'll like flash freeze these and save them in my freezer until I can make like some salsa or something, because my tomatoes are not going to be ready at the same time. These are my red bell peppers again, and they are just getting ready to flower. I'm not sure if I have any flowers just yet, but I'm starting to get little buds on some of them, and so we're waiting on those. I'm also keeping these guys top dressed with composted manure for good regular feeding as well. And next to that is some broccoli started. Everything in this garden has been started by seed, and they're direct sown after the weather warmed up. So this is the end of June that we're in, and everything has sprouted and has been growing all month long. So this is what I have with direct sowing in this whole garden. These are cucumbers over here, Market Moors, and I have 2 different types that I put in here. One that will like vine and climb up the little trellis, and one that will bush. So like you can see the 2 differences here. This one's starting to climb and will go up this little trellis. This one will kind of like bush out and give me a smaller bush with smaller cucumbers. Broccoli is doing great. I'm just waiting for that to get some size. Also top dressed with manure. I planted a couple of pole beans and they're taking forever, and I don't know why, but these guys, my last ones didn't even come up, so I had to replant like just last week. I replanted a couple more to see if they'd come up, and they're finally coming up. So glad to see they're coming up. Thankfully they grow fast once they get going, and we'll see if we have time for the beans to do anything, but we should. I have black beans over in there, which I'm excited about because I've never done black beans before. And if there's anything you want me to take more time and talk about, let me know in the comments so I can do a video on it. These are tomatillas, green tomatillas. I'm excited about those. I've never grown them before, so I'm waiting to see how these do. I actually started these guys a little bit early. I sprouted them in seed pots, and then as soon as they sprouted, I moved them out to the garden because I wasn't sure, with not growing them before, I wasn't sure how they would do direct sown. So I did them that way, and we'll see. We'll see what they do. Can't wait to make some green salsa. This, I had some eggplants planted and they never sprouted. So I just put in cauliflower seeds here, like a week and a half ago, and look I don't even see those coming up. I don't know if I just have to keep giving them more time or what, but now my cauliflower seeds aren't coming up right here, and I just have this bare spot of nothing sprouting, and it's driving me crazy. And those cauliflower seeds I just bought, so it's not like they're old or anything. I just don't know why they're not coming up. So I'm going to give them a little bit longer, and if they don't do anything, I'll have room for those extra plants I had in those buckets over there. And then this is a variety of different tomatoes. Some of them, like I think this row in the back, I bought an heirloom tomato at our local produce store and brought it home and planted the seeds inside of it, and they all came up. So I have a row of the heirloom tomato directly from the tomato. I have a row of beef steaks, and then I have a row of Roma tomatoes, which is my favorite tomato. I love Roma tomatoes. When my tomatoes start coming up, when they're really small, I pinch off the center stem to get them to branch, and you can see like how they've been branching out. They make all these great big clusters of branches, which should give me more fruit because I pinch off that center stem. So when it comes up, it's coming up straight off. I pinch that top, which is going to make the plant then kind of like fork off and make extra branches. So you can see how it like forked right here. That's because I pinched off that central stem. So everybody's starting to flower now. We're getting some blooms, and let's see, here's a cluster of blooms. So here's our little tomato flowers right there. And now we just need our pollinators to visit and get busy, and we'll have some tomatoes coming along pretty soon. So I'm really excited about that. Blossom end rot, if you have a problem with it, put some calcium in your garden, just right into the soil. You can buy bags of calcium at your garden center. Just mix it right into your soil. But more than that, it doesn't always mean you're low on calcium. Sometimes it just means you're not adequately watering. And adequate water is usually the #1 cause of having that blossom end rot on your tomatoes. Especially if it's a dry season and you're not being out there faithfully enough and watering, you're going to get blossom end rot. So get out there and keep watering. Feed your tomatoes well. These guys have been fed with alfalfa and fish emulsion, and then they've also been top dressed with manure, and so they're getting plenty of nutrients and iron and all sorts of stuff, phosphorus, all that stuff that they need, and they're being watered incredibly well. So I'm trying to my best to avoid any kind of blossom end rot, and we'll see how we do. If we get any signs of it, then I know it's because I'm just low on calcium, and I'll have to go get a bag of calcium and throw it into the dirt. But I really don't want to just be throwing it in there without really knowing for sure. So I'm on top of my watering. This is a couple of rows of onions. We have sweet onions as well as red onions planted. And this is my corn. I am so excited about this corn because it's growing incredibly well. This stalk is like this stalk is like so big and it's just doing great. Corn again is another heavy feeder. So these guys were planted with a lot of manure tilled in. I've been giving them fish emulsion and then more manure and just like loading them up and watering them well. Heavy, heavy feeders on corn. So sometimes if you get your stalks coming up but you're not really getting corn, there could be a couple of reasons for that. One, you're not feeding them right, or two, you're not planting them properly. See how I've got, they're in rows, but I also made sure they're kind of like in a square form. They're all together in like this box shape. Corn relies on the wind to like cross pollinate. So once you get the heads forming and those silks being made, they need the wind to transfer their pollen to each other. So you need them pretty close together in like this box kind of shape so that anywhere the wind blows, you're getting that cross pollination happening. And that's very, very important. And you also have to be feeding them very well and watering them very well. I have another volunteer here that I don't know how it got into this bed, but there it is. So I have to give that some kind of a stake and waiting to see what it is. Judging by that little flower, I'm thinking maybe it's probably a yellow squash, like a crookneck. And then there's another one over there, and I really don't know how they got into this garden, but there they are. And at the end here, because I think I had some critters steal the corn that came up right here. So I ended up with this empty spot. So I threw in some banana peppers. These are sweet banana peppers. These I did not start I did not start these from seed. I bought these at the store already started. So I have the little tag, and they're just sweet banana peppers. And waiting just to see how well these guys perform. Also, again, top dressed with composted manure and doing really well. So wasn't expecting to have these guys because this was supposed to be corn right here, but that's okay. So just check out that corn. I am so excited about it. A little miniature cornfield. And if it does really good for me this year and I get a lot of corn, I will be devoting more space to corn next year because we eat so much corn in this family. We love it. And I really want to put a lot up in the freezer. So hoping it takes off and does really well for us. So you can see like these two big maple trees I have, they block out a lot of sun this early in the morning, but it doesn't take long at all for it to get past this tree line here, and this will all be in full sun literally in probably about a half an hour. So this isn't as shady as it looks right now. I'm just out here pretty early, and my corn is starting to get those sun rays already. And then all of this will be covered in sun. My experimental garden will be in shade a little bit longer through the day. And as the sun kind of comes around more, that will all get sun a little bit later in the day. My little greenhouse. I have Grandpa Ott. I think I planted Grandpa Otts. They might not be Grandpa Otts, but I put in some morning glories here, and I'm just waiting for them to kind of overtake this trellis and start blooming. I think they'll be really pretty. Some snapdragons. My beautiful greenhouse, and someone is making some noise out front on some machinery, so I'm sorry if it's a little bit on the noisy side. Okay. So I wanted to talk about the potatoes a little bit. I have sunflowers getting ready to open any day now. Can't wait. My compost pile over there. We can do a video about how to compost at some point. I want to wait just a little bit before I do that, but we can definitely talk composting. So let's go in and talk about potatoes. So this year I'm trying the mounding with straw. Now potatoes, you want to buy your seed potatoes. You get your little bag of seed potatoes, and they're just little potatoes with like eye sprouts all over them, and you chop them up and you just go through and you start burying them into the ground. And then you have to start like piling up dirt in mounds all around the base of the potato as it grows, and you keep mounding and you keep mounding and you keep mounding, and you want about 6 inches to a foot deep. And I read online about using straw instead of dirt, because the main thing is you want to keep the bottom of the plant where it starts to form the potatoes covered and shaded and out of direct sun, because if they get sun on them, you end up with green potatoes and they won't be any good. So I've been mounding with the straw method, and I got it really, really thick, really heavy in there. Everything is well shaded. Everything grew really nicely. My potato plants are beautiful and big, and I've been feeding them with the fish emulsion, and they're doing great. I popped off, so the back ones, my purple potatoes went to flower, and I pinched off all of the flowers because I want all of their energy going down to the potatoes and not up here to the flowers, because potatoes will grow these little berries. Like they look like a little green tomato, and you can't eat them, so they're no good. So just pinch your flowers off so you're not getting the potato berries, and put all of your energy into the potatoes themselves, and then keep them mounded. And then once the potato plant dies back and turns brown, then you can dig up your plants and look for your potatoes in the ground. These guys are just starting to get a little bit brown, but I know that they've got some time to go, so I'm just going to let them continue to do their thing, continue to take care of them. I've got them mounded up really well, and I just keep coming out here, and I'm always checking, making sure nothing down in here where the plant goes deep, nothing's getting sunlight. I want to make sure anything forming down below is nice and shaded, and there's no way for my tubers to be getting any sunlight. And I'm just feeding them, and that's it. Potatoes really aren't that difficult. It's just a matter of keeping them mounded. I've seen people growing them in like tall bags that stay deep and shaded. You can grow them in tires. I've seen people use old tires to keep their potato plants shaded. Lots of different ideas. So we're going to see how this straw works, and I'm hoping and keeping my fingers crossed that it's doing great. These are black beans. I have a bird yelling at me. I have grackles, and they nested up in my garage, and she's just having a fit because I'm too close to where she nested, so you can hear her in the distance yelling at me. Sorry, baby. But these are black beans, and I was just really excited about these because I've never grown them before. And unlike garden green beans, black beans have to be left on the stem until the pods go dry. So once these start forming their pods, I think they're gonna get long and viney. I don't know if these guys bush or if they vine. If you know, please let me know in the comments. But if they vine, I'm just gonna attach them to the fence behind them, which is why I put them here. And then they'll pod out, make their bean pods, and then I have to leave them on the vine until the pod goes dry, and then you harvest the bean from the dry pod, and voila, you'll have black beans. So I'm very excited about that because I've never done that before. Again, this is the experimental bed, so I threw some extra watermelons in there. I'm not expecting these watermelons to perform too well because I don't think they're getting enough sun, but we'll see. They could surprise me. These are some cucumbers. These will vine, so I'm going to eventually let them kind of grab a hold of this fence and start climbing upwards for some vertical growing. I think these guys will do just fine. I think they get enough sun here to perform well enough for a cucumber, and they're shaded enough. Like we had 100-degree, a 2-week span of like 100 degrees, and all of these plants just kept withering. I had to water 3 times a day because it was so hot, and all of these thin-leaved vegetables just kept withering and not doing well. So I was actually very thankful that I had them in some shade for that span of hot weather, because I think I would have lost them if I had these guys in the full sun during all of that intense heat. These are yellow crookneck squashes, and very, very thin leaves, so they suffer water loss very easily in hot weather. So they have to be watered pretty frequently if you get extreme temperatures. That's my flowers. And just waiting for these guys to come along. These should be the male flowers that are coming out now, and then my female flowers will come out. And I will be hand pollinating some of these guys just to make sure they are getting pollinated, because squash can be pretty difficult to pollinate on its own. This is butternut squash, and same rule applies to them. I'll be hand pollinating these guys. So you just pick a male flower and bring it to a female flower and kind of like rub them together and help the pollination process there. So hopefully we'll get some butternut squash, which will be so yummy. There's some extra tomatillas that I'm experimenting with to see how they do over here. They're doing pretty good. And my lettuce did great being in the more shady area. So I'll definitely do lettuce here again. This lettuce has just started to bolt. So these guys down here have to get pulled, and then I'll be replanting some new lettuce. This bunch here I'm still eating, but I notice it's just starting to get bitter. So I have to get this pulled very soon, get it eaten, and I'm going to plant a new couple rows of lettuce and see if I can get a second harvest from this spot, because it did really good this year. So my lettuce performed, this is the shadiest part of the garden, and my lettuce performed great without drying out in the heat. So this was a success. This area worked great for lettuce, so I'll definitely be doing more. The plant that's really not doing well in the more shady bed is the broccoli and my leeks. My leeks are not doing well here. My leeks are performing great in the sun, but not in this bed. So I won't be doing leeks here again. My carrots are doing okay. Broccoli is not performing in the shady area at all. It's leggy and it's sad, and I'm going to see if I can move some of these. I moved one yesterday. It's actually getting eaten too, so it's definitely in a weakened state being in the shadier spot, so much to the point that it's being more susceptible to pests. I even have leaf miners, I see. So yeah, all the way around, broccoli is not going to perform in this bed. So something I learned. There's a bean. This is a pole bean. I'm waiting to come up, and yeah. I love being in a vegetable garden. I don't know, there's a feeling, you get different feelings in different kinds of different kinds of gardens, from your sun garden to your shade garden to your vegetable garden to your herb gardens. They all have a different feeling over your senses, and the vegetable garden is so soothing and so relaxing to sit back and just watch, because there's such a feeling of accomplishment that you get from growing your own food and knowing what's to come, and the harvesting and planting, planning all of your canning and freezing and anything else that you're going to do with it. There's such a fulfillment out of vegetable gardening that I don't get from my flower gardens. It's a totally different feeling. This pot here is actually lemongrass, and it just took off and did so well. So I'm looking forward to doing some Thai dishes with all of this lemongrass I have. I might even distill it and get some lemongrass hydrosol made up. But definitely looking forward to like some lemongrass chicken or some lemongrass curry or something really, really good made out of this. Really excited about that.